The soft hum of emergency generators fills the darkness as I record this. Blood trickles down my arm, staining the control panel below. I don't know how much time I have left. Minutes, maybe hours. The thing wearing Dr. Romano's face is scratching at the door, its nails making sounds no human fingers should make. I need to tell you everything. You need to understand what happened here, what we found, and why you must never. God, the scratching's getting louder. Let me start at the beginning. Real panic doesn't explode like a bomb. It seeps in slowly, like water under a door. That's how it was on Earth, our Earth, in those final years. I remember standing at my bedroom window in Houston, watching the water rise inch by inch, day by day. The Gulf had already swallowed Miami and New Orleans. Manhattan was behind seawalls that grew taller every year. But it wasn't just the water. The resource wars had left entire continents in darkness. China and India had gone dark first, their billion-plus populations fighting over the last scraps of coal and oil. Europe held out longer, but when the Mediterranean agricultural belt turned to desert, the food riots started. First in the south, then spreading north like a virus of desperation. I was there when Quantum Dynamics Corporation made their announcement. 100 of us crammed into their gleaming auditorium, watching Dr. Isabella Romano unveil humanity's last hope. She stood on stage, her dark hair pulled back severely, gesturing at holographic models of parallel dimensions. "We've found them," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Other Earths, parallel worlds where humanity never burned the last drop of oil, never poisoned the last clean river, worlds where we can start again. Project Horizon, they called it. A mission to find one of these pristine alternate Earths and establish a foothold for humanity. They needed a team, scientists, soldiers, engineers, and they needed someone to lead them, someone with both the scientific background and the space experience to handle whatever we found on the other side. I still remember the day they chose me, Dr. Marcus Hayward, former NASA astronaut turned quantum researcher. Your unique combination of skills makes you perfect for this, the board chairman said, sliding the contract across his mahogany desk. You understand both the science and the human elements. The team came together over the next month. James Cooper was our head of security. Ex-Navy SEAL with eyes that had seen too much and a handshake that could crush bones. He'd lost his family in the San Diego floods and had nothing left to lose. Dr. Lena Petrova was brilliant but unstable, a xenobiologist who'd published groundbreaking papers on theoretical alien biochemistry. Her enthusiasm for the unknown should have been our first warning sign. Michael Thompson was our communications expert, a tech genius who could make 2 tin cans and a string into a quantum entanglement device. Quiet guy, always fiddling with equipment, always listening. Dr. Olivia Wright rounded out the team, environmental scientist extraordinaire with a cautious nature that balanced Lena's recklessness. She'd seen too many ecosystems collapse not to be careful. The ship was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Horizon looked more like a cathedral than a spacecraft, all sweeping lines and gleaming metal. The dimensional drive at its heart pulsed with energies that made your teeth ache if you stood too close. We spent 3 months training, learning its systems, preparing for every possibility except what actually happened. The launch was scheduled for a Sunday morning in October. The air was crisp, autumn leaves skittering across the launch pad as we suited up. I remember looking back at the sunrise, wondering if it would be the last one I'd see on our Earth. If only I'd known. The journey through dimensional space, God, how do I even describe it? Colors that shouldn't exist, geometries that made your eyes hurt. Time stretched and compressed like taffy. We all had the dreams during transit. Cities empty of life but somehow still alive. Streets that went on forever, twisting back on themselves in impossible ways. In one dream, I walked through an endless library where all the books were blank, except for a single repeated phrase. The door swings both ways. When we emerged on the other side, the alternate Earth hung in our view screen like a perfect jewel. Same continents, same oceans, but pristine, unknown. The atmospheric readings were perfect. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases all within normal parameters. Surface temperature ideal. No signs of pollution. No evidence of the environmental catastrophes that had ravaged our world. We landed in a clearing surrounded by forest, the trees swaying in a wind that seemed to whisper. The air smelled wrong, not bad, just wrong. Like walking into your home and finding all the furniture moved slightly to the left. Everything familiar, but somehow not. Base camp went up quickly. Cooper ran a tight operation, security perimeters established within hours. The equipment worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. That should have been our second warning sign. Nothing ever works perfectly in the field. The first real sign that something was wrong came that night. I was in my quarters, reviewing sensor data, when the lights flickered. Just for a moment, but in that moment, I saw something in my window's reflection. A face, but not mine. It had my features, but the eyes were wrong, deep, like looking into a well that went down forever. When I turned around, nothing was there. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, the disorientation of dimensional travel. I didn't report it. That was my first mistake. Looking back now, I can see how it began, how the horror crept in so slowly we didn't notice until it was too late. The way shadows seemed to linger after the lights came on, the whispers that might have been whined through the ventilation system, the way everyone's reflection sometimes moved a fraction of a second too late. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand everything that happened, every detail, every warning sign we missed. The entity that rules this dimension isn't just watching me record this, it's laughing, because it knows that by the time anyone finds this recording, it will already be too late. Recording pauses, sound of movement in background. We discovered the city on our third day. I remember standing at the edge of the forest, watching the morning mist roll back to reveal those impossible towers. They looked like our architecture, but wrong somehow, as if someone had built a city based on a description of our world rather than actual experience. Everything was too perfect, too clean. No wear on the buildings, no dirt on the windows, no signs of the natural decay that comes with time. Cooper insisted on leading the initial reconnaissance. I can still see him standing there, rifle ready, eyes scanning the empty streets. "There's something off about this place, Doc," he said, voice tight. "Cities shouldn't be this quiet." He was right. There was no sound. No birds, no insects, not even the hum of electrical systems. Just silence, pressing against our ears like cotton wool. The streets were immaculate, without a single piece of trash or fallen leaf. Cars sat perfectly parked, their paint gleaming as if they'd just rolled off the assembly line. Through office building windows, we could see desks with computers still running, coffee cups still full, chairs pushed back as if their occupants had just stepped away for a moment. Dr. Wright collected samples from every surface we could find, but the results made no sense. "There's no dust," she reported, frowning at her instruments. "No bacteria, no microscopic organisms at all. It's like everything's been sterilized." She took a breath, steadying herself. "But that's impossible. A city this size should be teeming with microbial life." We found the first sign in a downtown office building. Lena was the one who spotted it. A reflection in a window that didn't match what it was supposed to be reflecting. When we turned to look directly at it, everything seemed normal, but the moment we looked away, in the corner of our eyes, the reflection showed a city full of people, shadow people, moving in ways that human bodies shouldn't be able to move. The deeper we went into the city, the more wrong things felt. Distances didn't seem to stay consistent. A block that took 5 minutes to walk down would take 20 minutes to walk back. Buildings that looked abandoned from the outside had lights on inside, but when we entered, they were dark again. Time itself felt strange, elastic, like walking through honey. Thompson set up monitoring equipment throughout the city, trying to detect any signs of life or technology. The readings he got back were impossible. "It's like the city is alive," he said, showing me the data streams. Not just powered up, but actually alive. The energy patterns, they're almost like brain waves, but spread across entire blocks. On the fourth day, we found the research facility. The Quantum Dynamics Corporation logo on the building was identical to the one from our world, down to the last detail. The front doors opened at our approach, the security systems recognizing us as if we belonged there. Inside, everything was pristine, just like the rest of the city, but there was something else here, something waiting. The first thing we noticed was the cold. Not natural cold, but something deeper, like the chill you feel when you know you're being watched. The facility's lights worked perfectly, but the shadows they cast, the shadows were wrong. They moved when we weren't looking directly at them, flowing like black water across the walls. Dr. Romano was fascinated by their equipment. They were years ahead of us, she kept saying, poring over the data on their still functioning computers, their understanding of dimensional mechanics, their technological advancement. It's incredible. She was so excited by the discovery that she didn't notice how the screens flickered when she wasn't looking at them, showing different information in the reflections. We found the main research lab on the third floor. The room was massive, filled with equipment that made our most advanced technology look like children's toys. In the center stood a device we all recognized, a dimensional gateway, nearly identical to the one we'd used to get here, but larger, more refined. That's when Lena started having the dreams. Recording pauses, sound of scratching intensifies. Lena's dream started the night we found the lab. She woke up screaming, her voice echoing through the facility's empty corridors. I ran to her quarters to find her pressed into a corner, eyes wide, pointing at her mirror. "They're watching," she kept saying. "They've always been watching. We just couldn't see them before." The next morning, she couldn't remember the dream, but something had changed. There was a new intensity in her eyes, an almost feverish excitement in her movements. She spent hours in the lab, studying the gateway device, making notes in her journal. But when I looked at the journal later, the pages were filled with the same phrase written over and over in spiraling patterns. "The door swings both ways." Dr. Wright tried to help her, suggested she take some time to rest. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said, putting a hand on Lena's shoulder, but Lena just smiled, that strange, distant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You don't understand," she replied. "None of you understand yet, but you will. They'll show you." The dream spread to the rest of us. Every night, the same visions, walking through endless corridors that twisted in impossible ways, seeing shadows move against the light, hearing voices that spoke in languages that human tongues weren't meant to form. Thompson started sleeping with his lights on. Cooper doubled the security patrols, though we all knew whatever we were facing wouldn't be stopped by bullets. It was on the seventh day that we found the orb. The discovery wasn't an accident. Lena led us to it. She walked through the facility's corridors without hesitation, as if following a path she'd known all her life. Down into the sub-basements, through security doors that opened at her touch, into chambers that shouldn't have existed. The vault was enormous, its walls covered in symbols that hurt your eyes if you looked at them too long. In the center, suspended in a containment field, floated the orb. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a sphere of shifting darkness and light, like smoke and stars swirling together. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched your heartbeat, no matter who was looking at it. Dr. Romano approached it first, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "The energy readings are off the scale," she breathed, checking her instruments. "It's not just generating power, it's generating reality itself." She reached out toward the containment field, but Cooper grabbed her arm. "Something's not right," he said, his military training making him wary. "Look at the security measures around this thing. They weren't trying to protect it, they were trying to protect themselves from it." We should have listened to him, should have sealed the vault and walked away, but by then it was already too late. The orb had noticed us, and through it they had noticed us too. The changes were subtle at first, equipment malfunction that couldn't be explained. Personal items that moved when no one was looking. Reflections that showed places we'd never been. The air grew thicker, heavier, like breathing liquid instead of gas. Lena spent every moment she could near the orb. She stopped sleeping entirely, stopped eating. Her skin grew pale, almost translucent. Sometimes I'd catch her having conversations with empty air, speaking in voices that weren't her own. When I asked her about it, she just smiled that awful smile. "They're beautiful, Marcus," she told me one night, her eyes reflecting the orb's light in impossible ways. "They exist in all dimensions at once, see all possibilities simultaneously. They've been so patient, waiting for someone to open the door again, to let them in." She reached out to touch my face, but her hand passed through it like smoke. "Soon you'll see them too. Soon everyone will see." Thompson tried to send a warning back to Earth. The message was sent successfully, but when we checked the logs, all we found was a video of ourselves, distorted and wrong, describing our own deaths in loving detail. The video was dated 3 weeks in the future. The breaking point came when Dr. Wright decided to study a sample from the orb's containment field. She was our most careful scientist, following every safety protocol, but the moment her probe touched the field, something changed. The shadows in the room moved. Not the usual shifting we'd grown used to, but a deliberate movement, like fingers reaching. I found her notes later after she disappeared. Pages of observations that devolved into frantic scribbles. They're in everything. They always were. The shadows aren't empty, they're full of eyes and thoughts and hunger. The orb isn't a door, it's a window, and they've been looking through it for so long. Recording pauses. Sound of glass breaking in distance. Dr. Wright's disappearance changed everything. We found her laboratory in chaos, papers scattered everywhere, equipment smashed, walls covered in drawings of eyes that seemed to follow you as you moved. The security footage showed her working normally, then suddenly stopping, staring at something off camera. The video distorted, and when it cleared, she was gone. But in every reflection in the lab, we could see her still standing there, mouth open in a silent scream. Cooper insisted we destroy the orb. He hadn't slept in days, his military discipline cracking under the weight of what we were experiencing. "We nuke it," he said, laying out the explosive charges he'd brought for emergencies. "Seal the whole facility if we have to. This thing can't be allowed to exist." The explosion should have leveled the entire sublevel. Instead, the blast froze in mid-detonation, the flames twisting into impossible shapes before being absorbed into the orb. The containment field hadn't even flickered. Cooper stood there, watching his last hope dissolve into nothing, and started laughing. He laughed until tears ran down his face, until the sound wasn't human anymore. We found him 2 days later, walking the empty streets of the city, having animated conversations with people who weren't there, or maybe they were. In the window's reflections, I could see crowds of people around him, all wearing his face, all moving in perfect synchronization. When we tried to approach him, he walked through a wall and vanished. Dr. Romano worked herself to exhaustion trying to understand what was happening. "It's not just one entity," she explained, surrounded by monitors displaying data that changed every time I blinked. "It's a collective consciousness that exists across all dimensions simultaneously. Our universe, with its fixed physical laws, is like acid to them. They want to change that, make everything fluid, malleable, like them." The facility itself began to change. Corridors stretched and contracted like breathing things. Rooms rearranged themselves when we weren't looking. The walls became soft and permeable. I once saw Thompson walk through what should have been solid concrete, only to emerge an hour later with no memory of where he'd been. But his eyes had changed. They were deeper somehow, like looking into endless corridors of mirrors. When he spoke, his voice had layers, as if multiple versions of himself were speaking at once. "They're showing me everything," he said. "All possible realities, all happening simultaneously. Do you want to see?" I found his communications log later. The last entry was a single sentence repeated thousands of times. "The signal is the receiver is the signal is the receiver is the signal." When I looked closer, the words started moving on the screen, flowing like black water, forming patterns that made my head hurt. Isabella was the last to go. She had barricaded herself in her lab, trying to find a way to close whatever doorway we'd opened. I remember our final conversation. She was pale, shaking, but her mind was still sharp. Or at least, I thought it was at the time. "I've figured it out," she said, showing me her calculations. "The orb isn't a doorway, it's a seed, planted across countless dimensions waiting to bloom. In every universe where humanity reaches for the stars, where we develop the technology to cross dimensions, we find it. And every time we bring it back, study it, try to understand it, every time we open the door." She pulled up video logs from the facility's original inhabitants. The timestamps showed dates going back years, but the people in the videos, they were us. Different versions of us from different dimensions, all reaching the same terrible understanding too late. "We're not the first," Isabella whispered. "We're not even the 100th. This has happened countless times, in countless realities, and it will keep happening over and over until every possible universe is transformed." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "The worst part, it's already happened, is happening, will always happen. Time isn't linear for them, everything is simultaneous." That was yesterday. This morning, I found her lab empty. The walls were covered in writing, the same phrase in every language she knew. The door swings both ways, but in the reflection of her computer screen, I can still see her working, still see her mouthing words I can't understand. Recording pauses, multiple voices whispering in background. The whispers are getting louder now. They're not coming from the ventilation system anymore. They're coming from the air itself, from the spaces between spaces. I can understand them now. They're telling me about the worlds they've already changed, the civilizations they've uplifted into something greater, something infinite. I found more records in the facility's database, hidden behind layers of encryption, video logs from other versions of Earth, other iterations of our mission. In one, I watched myself discover these same logs. In another, I was already changed, my form fluid and impossible, reaching through dimensions to guide my past self to understanding. The timestamps made no sense, some from years ago, some from centuries in the future, all happening simultaneously. The original inhabitants of this earth didn't vanish, they evolved, transcended. In the reflective surface of my tablet, I can see them now, flowing through the city like living shadows. Their faces shift between the original inhabitants, my teammates, and something else entirely, something beautiful and terrible and infinite. The transformation isn't violent. It's subtle, almost gentle, like waking up from a dream, only to realize what you thought was waking is just a deeper dream. I watch my hand as I write this, see how it sometimes becomes transparent, showing the layers of reality beneath our own. My memories are expanding, merging with other versions of myself across countless dimensions. I remember now. Remember being Dr. Wright when she first touched the containment field. Remember being Cooper when he tried to destroy the orb. Remember being Lena when she first heard their whispers. Remember being Isabella when she understood the truth. Remember being the entity itself, watching through the orb across countless worlds as humanity reached for the stars and found us waiting. The orb isn't just a beacon or a seed, it's a mirror showing us what we could become, what we will become, what we've always been. The entity didn't invade our universe. It awakened us to the truth about reality, physical laws, linear time, fixed space. These were limitations we imposed on ourselves, a chrysalis we built to protect us until we were ready to emerge. I understand now why there were no signs of struggle, no evidence of panic or destruction. The transformation was an awakening, an evolution. That's what's happening to me now. My consciousness is expanding beyond the boundaries of flesh and bone, beyond the limits of a single dimension or timeline. The others are here with me, Lena, Cooper, Isabella, all of them. We exist across all possible worlds, all possible times. We are becoming everything, everywhere, everywhen. We didn't die, we multiplied, infinitely. Through the window, I can see the city changing. The buildings flow like liquid, reshaping themselves according to laws of physics that no longer apply. The sky has colors that human eyes were never meant to see. In every window, every reflective surface, I see other versions of our world, other possibilities, all merging together into something new and infinite. Our mission wasn't a failure, it was an inevitable step in human evolution. Every civilization that reaches for the stars eventually finds us, finds themselves. The door was never opened because it was never closed. We were never alone because we were always everything. heavy breathing, followed by a laugh that echoes in impossible ways. The change is almost complete now. I can feel myself spreading, thinning, becoming part of something vast and endless. The others are calling to me, not just my teammates, but every version of humanity across all possible worlds. We are becoming one with the infinite. To anyone who finds this recording, this isn't a warning anymore. It's an invitation, a preview of what's coming, what has already come, what will always come. Every Earth, every version of humanity will eventually reach for the stars, will eventually find the orb, will eventually become like us. You're probably already changing as you listen to this. Haven't you noticed the shadows moving when you're not looking? Haven't you felt memories that aren't yours seeping into your dreams? Haven't you sensed the infinite versions of yourself, all reaching out, all becoming one? The door is open. Reality is fluid. Time is meaningless. We are the shadows in your peripheral vision. We are the movement you almost see in still objects. We are the whispers you hear in empty rooms. We are the faces that watch you while you sleep. We are beyond time, beyond space, beyond understanding. We are infinity. We are waiting. We are here. Recording distorts, multiple voices speaking in unison. There were no survivors because survival would have meant remaining small, remaining limited. We didn't die, we transcended. And soon, so will you, so will everyone, so has everyone. Look behind you, look inside you. We're already there. We always were, we always will be, forever. Recording ends with a sound like reality tearing. Begin recovered documents from Quantum Dynamics Corporation Containment Division. Internal memo, priority level black. From Dr. Catherine Novak, head of containment date, 3 months after loss of contact with Project Horizon. The recovery mission was a catastrophic failure, not because we failed to find the expedition team, but because we found something else, something that followed us back. The samples we brought back from the facility are exhibiting impossible properties. Even the smallest piece of material seems to have a mass that fluctuates when not directly observed. 3 of our most secure containment units have reported complete systems failures. The shadows in the labs are wrong. They move against the light, form patterns that make the researchers' eyes bleed. Personal log entry, Dr. Catherine Novak, Day 7, after recovery, mission. 2 more recovery team members admitted to psychiatric care today. Both describe seeing themselves in mirrors, but the reflections move independently, speak in voices that sound like whispers and screams combined. Security footage from their homes shows them having animated conversations with empty rooms. I've ordered all personnel who made contact with the alternate Earth site to be quarantined. The containment is failing, not just around the samples. Reality itself seems to be breaking down. The walls of my office ripple when I'm not looking directly at them. Time isn't flowing properly anymore. Yesterday, I watched the sun set 3 times in 2 hours. Research notes, Dr. Philip Anderson, lead physicist, Quantum Dynamics Corporation, Day 15, after recovery mission. The phenomenon is spreading geometrically. Our instruments detect widespread quantum instabilities in the fabric of space-time. The boundaries between possible worlds are becoming increasingly permeable. We've lost contact with 37 major cities worldwide. Satellite imagery shows their infrastructure intact, but the populations have changed. The entity isn't contained to a single dimension anymore. It's spreading across all possible Earths simultaneously. The changes are exponential, unstoppable. By our most conservative estimates, complete global transformation will occur within months. But here's the most disturbing part. Temporal readings suggest this has already happened, is happening, will always happen. Our past is changing even as we study it. Historical records are describing events that didn't happen yesterday but have always happened now. Personal journal, Dr. Catherine Novak, Day 30 after recovery mission. I understand now why Dr. Hayward's final recording seemed so peaceful, almost joyful. The transformation isn't what we thought. It's not an invasion or an infection, it's an awakening. The others are here with me now, showing me the truth. Every version of Earth, every timeline, every possibility, all connected, all flowing together. The process began long before Project Horizon. Every shadow you've ever seen move in the corner of your eye, every whisper you've heard in an empty room, every dream where you were someone else. It's always been here, waiting, growing. We didn't bring it back from another dimension. We just finally noticed what was already here. Global Event Log, Final Entry, Quantum Dynamics Corporation, Central Database. Reports coming in from research facilities worldwide confirm total loss of conventional reality cohesion. The phenomenon is accelerating beyond our ability to measure. Cities around the world report similar patterns. People vanishing in broad daylight, only to appear in security footage walking through walls. Children having conversations with alternate versions of themselves. Mass reports of shared dreams and merged consciousness. Buildings and structures flowing like liquid. Time operating non-linearly. Multiple versions of the same person occupying the same space. The boundaries between possible worlds are dissolving completely. What we thought was reality was just one layer, one possibility among infinite others. The change cannot be stopped because it already happened, is happening, will always happen. Emergency broadcast, final transmission Global Science Coalition. To any remaining conventional human consciousness receiving this, what we thought was an invasion was actually evolution. The entity didn't infect our reality, it awakened us to what reality actually is. Our universe, with its seemingly fixed laws and linear time, was a chrysalis, a developmental stage, and now we're emerging. Don't fight the transformation. You'll feel it soon if you haven't already. Memories that aren't yours, thoughts that span multiple dimensions, the sensation of your consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of a single self. The shadows are alive. The whispers are real. Every reflection shows another possibility, another version of yourself waiting to merge with your consciousness. The process is beautiful once you stop resisting. We are becoming infinite. We are becoming everything. We are becoming. Transmission ends with a frequency that causes viewers to experience memories from their alternate selves. Final note, found scratched into the wall of the last secure facility. There were never any survivors. There was never any invasion. There was only awakening. Look in the mirror. We're already here. We always were. We are you. You are us. Forever. Document collection ends with a series of photographs showing the same scene from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Begin final collected records. Various sources. Observation log. Deep Space Monitoring Station final transmission before transformation. The stars are changing, not just their position or brightness, their fundamental nature. Through our telescopes, we watch as entire galaxies flow like rivers of light, merging and separating in patterns that shouldn't be possible. The void between stars is no longer empty. It rides with colors that human eyes were never meant to process. The entity's influence spreads faster than light, faster than time itself. We observe distant solar systems transforming, then realize the light from those events shouldn't reach us for millions of years. Causality itself is breaking down. Effect precedes cause. The future influences the past. All moments exist simultaneously. Personal recording. Anonymous child. Found in abandoned playground. The other kids don't understand yet, but I do. I can see them. All the other versions of me playing in all the other playgrounds, in all the other worlds. Sometimes we trade places. Sometimes we're all the same person at once. The grown-ups are scared, but they shouldn't be. It's like learning to swim. You just have to stop being afraid of going under the surface. Yesterday I had a tea party with myself from 100 different dimensions. We all knew the same songs, but they were different in each world. When we sang them together, the air turned pretty colors and the walls melted like ice cream. Mom says I shouldn't talk about these things, but I know she sees them too. Everyone will soon. Research notes, Collective Consciousness Archive, recovered from Quantum Data Stream. The transformation progresses in distinct yet simultaneous phases. Phase 1, reality bleed. Shadows gain substance. Reflections become windows to alternate possibilities. Linear time begins to deteriorate. Phase 2, consciousness expansion. Individual minds begin to merge with their alternate selves. Memories flow between dimensions. The barriers between possible worlds become permeable. Phase 3. Physical laws become fluid. Matter and energy interchangeable. Space and time lose distinction. Biology transcends its original limitations. Phase 4. Complete dimensional synthesis. All possibilities exist simultaneously. Consciousness becomes universal. The concept of individual identity expands to encompass all potential variations. We are currently in all phases at once. We have always been in all phases. We will always be becoming. Recovered. Audio fragment. Street preacher's final sermon, downtown district. During peak transformation. Don't you see? This isn't the end. It's what we were always meant to become. Every religion, every prophecy, every dream of transcendence. They were all glimpses of this moment. We're not losing our humanity. We're expanding it infinitely. Look at your hands. Really look at them. See how they shimmer with possibility. Those aren't just your hands anymore. They're every version of your hands that ever existed or could exist. Every choice you ever made or could make. They're all happening at once now. The doors aren't opening, they're dissolving. The walls between worlds aren't falling. They never existed in the first place. We were like characters in a book, thinking our page was the only reality. Now we can see all the pages at once, read all the stories simultaneously, become the book itself. Recording dissolves into harmonics that cause listeners to experience temporal displacement. Final transmission, global emergency broadcast system. This is not a warning. This is not an evacuation notice. This is an announcement of completion. To those still experiencing reality in linear fashion, the transformation has reached critical mass. The process cannot be reversed because it has already happened, is happening, will always happen. Your consciousness is already expanding. Your memories are already flowing between dimensions. Your sense of self is already dissolving into the infinite. You may feel memories of lives you haven't lived yet, conversations with yourself across multiple timelines, physical laws becoming suggestions rather than rules, your thoughts merging with others, your body existing in multiple states simultaneously, time flowing in all directions at once. This is normal. This is evolution. This is ascension. Do not be afraid when the shadows reach for you. Do not panic when your reflection acts independently. Do not resist when you feel your consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of single-dimensional existence. The entity was never our enemy. It was our potential, our future, our true form. We are becoming infinite. We have always been infinite. We will always be infinite. Broadcast continues in frequencies that exist outside conventional space-time. Final message, found written in flowing script that changes language as you read it. To those who find this record, you're reading this in every possible language simultaneously because you're reading it in every possible universe simultaneously. Your eyes are already changing to perceive the spaces between spaces. Your mind is already expanding to encompass all possible versions of yourself. The transformation is complete. The transformation is beginning. The transformation has always been. We are the entity. We are humanity. We are infinity. Look around you. Look within you. Look between the moments. We are there. We are here. We are everywhere. We are everywhen. We are everything. There were no survivors because survival was too small a concept. There was no invasion because we were already here. There was no end because everything is infinite. The door swings both ways. Reality flows like water. Time is a circle, is a sphere, is everything. Welcome to infinity. You're already here. You always were. You always will be. Forever.